A little bit more about me. My name is Jen Lashansky. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer at Be Social Change. I'm also the Chief Career Coach. I am a career coach and a social impact guide. My career spans working for many different small nonprofits, a couple of different social enterprises, and being a social entrepreneur myself. I am incredibly delighted to be able to use the Be Social Change community to bring resources and best practices to social impact professionals around the world. So what is Be Social Change? We're an organization dedicated to helping you make your greatest impact in your career. That means that we host skill building workshops and webinars like this, networking events and regular member mixers, as well as panel events and resource sharing in order to help people do better in good careers. If you're interested, we have a library of content available to all Be Social Change members. Check that out if you're looking to learn additional skills. It's a great resource. I think there's about 60 plus videos there now. So I want to talk about what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn key strategies for building your network. And number one, first and foremost, is to be clear on your direction. Now I want to say something about this. Your network is your greatest asset throughout your entire career. Oftentimes, we sort of treat networks like doctors where we only go to them when we really need them, but it's beneficial to have a healthy, vibrant, thriving network throughout your whole career. And your direction might change as you go. You might be starting a network in one area and then changing it as you go, but your network grows with you. And that's a great thing. Just because somebody is not working in your field doesn't mean that they don't have information or access to a field. So being clear in your direction, no matter where you are in your network building, is going to be hugely imperative. You have to answer the questions, what you want and where you're looking to go. This is first and foremost. I meet a lot of people who are like, I need a new job. I'm going to get out there and network. And I'll say to them, what is it that you're looking for? And they don't know. And that's really key, is to be able to pinpoint what it is that you actually want to learn more about or to build relationships in. Because without that, you're sort of casting a net and hoping to catch fish that may or may not actually be who you want to connect with. So direction is going to serve you, and it's definitely going to be a time saver for people who you'd be talking with who want to know how they can support you. So definitely get clear. Some of the things to get clear on are your why. What's your purpose and your values? Be Social Change does a ton of work around helping people identify their purpose, as well as your values. Your values are a key asset and decision-making framework in any part of your career. So get clear on what they are, and that will help you understand what it is that might come next for you. If you're not maybe looking for a job, if maybe the purpose of growing a network is career ascension, then your purpose is going to be also important, right? What is it that you want to grow into in your career? What are the next positions or the next stages that you're excited about? Along those lines, what is the role that you're seeking? Get really clear on that. What are the skills and experience that you want to be implementing? When do you want to make a change? And who are the types of people that you want to work with? If you can answer for everybody that you're talking to, your why, what, how, when, and who, instead of your where, that is going to really benefit you in any type of work that you do and in any conversation that you're going to have. Another way that I like to frame this, if the why, what, who, how, when, and who feels a little bit distant to you, it's not like the framework for clarity that you're looking at, is that when you're thinking about your career, there's 4 key buckets, if you will, that you want to have answers about. One is, what sector do you want to work in? Like, just get very clear and specific. Social impact is not a sector, it's a space comprised of sectors like the nonprofit sector, social enterprise sector, corporate social responsibility sector, and the public sectors, right? Which are many also subsectors, education, healthcare, government, et cetera. So get really clear on your sector. The organization type. Now, this is the most amorphous of these criteria because it can describe both the size of an organization, its age and maturity. Is it a startup or is it an institution? It can describe the issue areas that an organization is serving. It can describe the culture of an organization. So organization type has many criteria, and you want to get as clear on as many of those as you possibly can. Your role. You might not have the exact title in mind, but you got to know approximately what department. What are other titles out there that are akin to what it is that you want to either grow into or to get into. And then the location, very simply put, where do you want to be working? Is it in a specific locale, or is it online? Is it a hybrid model? Get clear on your location. Being clear on your direction is going to help you in a job search in a tremendous way. And I often meet people who are like, well, I don't know what I want to do, so I'm going to keep my arms wide open. And you actually have a duty in your networking conversations, as well as in your own time, to get as clear as you can on these criteria, because it's going to make your networking conversations better. It's going to tell people how they can best help you. And it's also an important part of doing your homework, right? You don't want to show up to a conversation and be like, hey, tell me anybody you think I should connect with, because that person probably has thousands of connections. Helping them steer where their energies and supporting you is a favor that you can do for someone. So you got to be really clear on your direction. And one way that you can do this is by developing a clear, crisp, and effective elevator pitch. Now, there are many formulas out there for an elevator pitch. There's not one that's better than the other. I have one very simple one that I want to share. And I want to just emphasize that even if you're not looking for a job, developing an elevator pitch is going to really serve you in any networking context. And especially if you're looking for career growth or building out connections, being able to describe what it is that you do is going to serve the quality of connections that you make with people. One thing that I always try and encourage people to do is make your elevator pitch as simple as possible. Impressive vocabulary does not help an elevator pitch. It makes people burn more calories in order to understand what it is that you do. So one test that you might put your elevator pitch through is, can a 5th or 6th grader understand what it is that I do? Use language that's simple enough in that direction. So here's a formula. You want to start out with your name. My name is Jen. Choose A is your name. And I am a career coach. B is like the broad strokes, what it is you do or want to do. You can always say, I'm Jen and I want to be a career coach. B is like the broad strokes. How would people kind of mark you down on paper? Are you a teacher? Are you, a sales expert? What is it that your broad strokes are? Then C is really getting into more definition about the who, the what, the where, or the what, the how, not so much the why. So it's, I work with people who are looking to find fulfilling social impact jobs. So one thing that you can think about is, what is it that is special about B, right? Like, there's a lot of teachers out there. Is it the age group that you work with? Is it the what it is that you teach? C is where you get a little bit more specific to give people a sense of what it is that's unique about you. And then D is where you share the results of your work by helping them get clarity on their vision and land an impactful job with less stress or overwhelm. Without D, elevator pitches are pretty unmemorable, right? You're probably not going to remember every elevator pitch, but D makes it real for people. D gives people a sense of like, oh, you know what? I know somebody who's super overwhelmed in their job search. Therefore, I want to make this connection. D is an important part of the equation, and too many people leave it off. So I'm not going to give you time in this moment to work on your elevator pitch, but I really do encourage you to go forward and work on this in your free time. Again, A is your name. B is the broad strokes part of your career. C is a little bit more definition about your career, either the who, what, how, or the where. And then the D is the results, the outcomes of your work. And D is something I recommend spending a little bit extra time on. Again, the hope is that it's as simple and clear as possible, so that somebody can instantly say, hey, I know someone I want to connect you with, or I can make this recommendation of an organization I think you should check out. That's an effective elevator pitch. And again, that comes by being really clear on your direction. Number 2, the second strategy for building a great network is to find your people online. We have all just lived through a wild couple of years with the global pandemic. And so online networking became one of the most important facets of networking. It's definitely not the only one. There's plenty of in-person opportunities still happening. But thinking about how it is that you can connect with people online, it's going to help you grow your network more seamlessly without dedicating, hours upon hours of your week to going to networking events. If that's your jam, go for it. I see you in extroverts. So one thing that you want to check out is be on the lookout for digital communities. What I mean by this is that there are large groups of people that exist in different places online who might share your values. If you are looking for like career networking, I promise you there's a LinkedIn group for it. But there's also things like Facebook groups. There are so many Facebook groups dedicated to different careers. Go online and make some connections there. Slack groups. There's a bunch of them. And in fact, they're transforming. So now it's not just Slack, but there's a whole bunch of platforms that are serving different communities. There's Circle So, Geneva, Mighty Networks. You can find some really interesting groups out there that are existing in sort of like the group chat forum space, which will be great places to make connections. I mentioned LinkedIn. LinkedIn groups, there are thousands of them, and you can check them out. LinkedIn is like, those groups tend to have varying levels of kind of use. Some of them are a little bit quieter than others, but it's still really effective. And if nothing else, using LinkedIn in any sort of career growth is going to be really beneficial. Maybe you're not finding groups, but you're finding specific people that you want to connect with, and that's really helpful as well. And virtual events. One thing that I want to say about virtual events is that one of the things that you can do is always introduce yourself in the chat. Find connections. If you see somebody else's introduction and you think that there's synergy between what it is that you're doing and what they're doing, make an introduction there. You wouldn't believe how many people come to Be Social Change events and then find the clients that they need to work with or find a future employer. Don't shy away from using those chats. I know we have a kind of shy group today, but those chats are a really effective way of sharing a little bit more about yourself and making those connections. Now, once you find people online, you want to really connect with them. Now, we always say people connect with people they like, know, and trust. And this is because if you're kind of lurking in an online forum space and you only jump in for reasons of self-promotion, you're not giving people a whole lot to work with as far as reasons why they should reach out to you or get to know you. So you really want to make an effort to connect and provide value by being somebody who, is more than just self-promoting. We always say lead with generosity and always be helpful. If somebody has a question in a chat, do 5 minutes of research and see if you can help them. If you have an expertise that you can share that. It is going to help people and it is going to go a long way towards developing a really strong potential massive group of a network, is to make yourself available. I always laugh because we have a LinkedIn group for Be Social Change members, and I have encouraged people to go on and introduce themselves or make their job pitch, and people are very reluctant to do so. What I'd say is that hesitation isn't serving you, and it's not serving other people who want to show up to support you. That's why they're part of groups like that. So then the other thing is that once you've laid this groundwork, once you've made yourself into somebody who's like a known entity, trustworthy, that's been helpful so far, then you can make a specific ask. Say something along the lines of, hey, I'm looking for a job in XYZ. Here's my elevator pitch. Do you know anybody I should connect with? It is going to help you so much in anything that you want to do. So I highly recommend, don't shy away from making that ask either. You can be helpful, but you also have to be direct. And making an ask is something that we don't talk about a lot. People, especially in the United States, are very shy to make asks, but it's actually how you can do people a favor. People want to support each other and they don't know how unless you actually ask them. So the third step is to research companies that match your interest and values. Why is this a part of networking? Why is there research as a part of getting out there and networking? Number one, it's because it gives you direction and clarity on who it is that you're connecting with. Without a list of organizations or individuals that you really want to get to know more about, again, you can sort of cast your net and hope for hope, but that research really lands you in the part of the sea where where you know what you want to catch. So start researching the organizations based on your answers to this, the clarity searching and the clarity seeking that you're doing. And then make a list of 10 to 15 organizations that meet the criteria that you set earlier, as far as the sector, organization type, role, or location. Again, if you're not in a career search, say you're doing this because you know the importance of growing your network, you still want to find 10 organizations that meet criteria for organizations you admire, you can learn something from. places that might have mentors that you're seeking to reach out to. So definitely get your list together. It's almost like a target list, if you will, of people and organizations you really want to network with. It is going to be a much more fruitful form of networking than simply, being like making yourself available on the broad internet. So then you can use your connections to identify contacts at these organizations, find them on LinkedIn, see if you have a connection or something in common with them. If anybody has questions about how to search for people or how to search for organizations and potential connections to those organizations on LinkedIn, drop that question in the chat and we can do it together at the end here. So one thing that you can think about is if you have a connection, great. You are far more likely to get a response from somebody when you have a connection if that person makes an introduction. If you don't have a connection to an organization that you're seeking, or an organization or a person that you're seeking to connect with, introduce yourself and ask if they're open to chatting by phone or by Zoom. You can do coffee chats, though those definitely take more time. One little hint that I want to provide here is that it is better to network with people who are not the senior leadership at an organization. People often are like, well, I want to talk to the leaders because they're the ones who have decision-making power. And as true as that is, they're the ones who also have the least time, who are going to be least frank and honest about the actual reality of the internal culture in any organization, and who are most removed from the work. So you can do yourself a favor by really actually networking with the, with professionals either at your professional level or below. It is going to go a lot further. And those people also usually are in better touch with HR and can actually even recommend or refer your application after the fact. So don't think that it's best to get on the calendars of leaders. Actually, it's better to get on the calendars of like mid-management and below. Those people also spend more time and there's more mutual benefit in the connection. So highly, just a tip to consider as you're thinking about who you want to connect with in the companies that you research. Number 4, understanding our new reality. Here's what I mean by this. The pandemic fundamentally changed our sense of our schedules, our sense of helping each other, our sense of how it is that things happen. And people really understand that we have to network, and the majority of networking is going to happen online. I always try and emphasize that people want to be helpful. If you are definitely going to get some non-responses, you're going to get some ghosted like responses. There's going to be times where people don't have the bandwidth to help. But if they do, generally, people really want to be helpful, especially in the social impact space, which is our specialty and expertise at Be Social Change. So they will also want to feel connected. We've felt super disconnected over the course of the past couple of years of the pandemic, and even coming out of it, there's still this sense of like reconnection or reemerging. And so people are eager to take time to connect with one another. Now, one thing is that because our networks have fundamentally changed in the last 2 years, you can really think about playing for the short term and the long term. And what I mean by this is that it's not enough to just have somebody be able to do something for you in the snap second, like refer your resume internally to HR or make a connection to a potential client. You also want to cultivate a network for the long term. And this is something that more and more people are realizing, is that, yeah, you can have short-term, wins, but it's also really going to be helpful if you can make a connection that's going to go beyond just, one action. Your network is responsible for so much success. I almost want to have people guess in the chat. It's like how many jobs that are filled each year are a result of networking. And LinkedIn did a great study. And the answer is, I'm seeing if anybody's writing in the chat. I don't think so. The answer is 80% of jobs are attached to networking opportunities. So if you're only playing for short-term wins, you're missing out on the long-term growth of your network and of opportunities that you might come across. There's also economic considerations. The people are kind of on edge about the economy, at least here in the United States, and I think elsewhere. Yeah, Morgan, that number isn't surprising, right? 80% of opportunities. For all of the people I meet who are like, I send 100 resumes and cover letters in every day, I say that is not an effective use of your time. That's 20% effective. Go out and meet people, talk to the people in the organizations where you're applying to. It's going to go a whole lot further. So as I was saying, there's a whole lot of kind of economic concern in this moment. And so people are also really trying to shore up their own jobs, their own financial safety nets, their security. And what this means is that the vast majority of sophisticated professionals out there understand the importance of networking. And because of that, they're more likely to do so in moments of high stress or potential tumult. The tech sector has been losing lots and lots of jobs. So it's not unusual to hear, get lots of tech people reaching out for, for networking requests and so forth. So there are economic considerations, and that makes this moment particularly potent for making honest connections. Now, number 5, the last key strategy before I give you some tips, is to, I like to separate the strategies and the tips here, is to stay organized and stay connected. So it is likely over the course of your professional life that you're going to network with hundreds upon hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. It is not realistic that you have all of those people on your phone and that you're texting them on a regular basis. So when I'm saying play for the long term, it's not that you need to make a connection where you're, constantly in touch, but you do want to remember who it is that's been a part of your career journey and who it is who you've had good connections with. So there's a couple of ways. LinkedIn is great. LinkedIn tells you when you connected with someone, which is really handy. So if I remember, hey, when I was making my last career shift, I was connecting with a lot of people who might be interested in, this career shift. I can go to LinkedIn and see when those connections were made. LinkedIn is also really helpful just to stay in touch as well. I have somebody in my network who does shout outs on International Women's Day and, other major holidays to be like, hey, I want to, thank all the people in my network who I connected with last year, or I want to do a special shout out to some of the people who, who I haven't touched base with in a long time. And it's actually a great way of keeping this person top of mind for me. And I'll send her notes and I'll send her potential connections and clients too. So use LinkedIn strategically. If you are not able to connect with someone on LinkedIn, say they don't have a LinkedIn profile, or they're not responding to you, there are resources out there that allow you to find people's emails based on the URL of the company they work for. And hunter.io is one of those. You can actually go ahead and find people's emails and reach out to them directly by email. It goes straight to their inbox. It's not spammy because it's coming straight from you. So I love Hunter.io as a resource for finding the people that you want, not necessarily for keeping track of them. Now, Boomerang for Gmail is apparently an old plugin that I still use because Gmail has figured out how to do this, which is to boost something back into your inbox after you've sent it. So if I send a networking request and, I really want to connect with this person, I'll have Boomerang, say, ping this email in my inbox after 2 weeks if I haven't heard back from this person. And it's a great way for me to basically be able to track the cadence of the conversations I'm having and do follow-up, which is such an important part of outreach. Do not only write once, write 2 or 3 times. There will be busy periods in my schedule where I just can't get back to everybody in my email. And so I only get back to the people who have followed up at least 2 or 3 times. Follow up, it is going to help you. HubSpot is like a personal CRM as well as a professional CRM. CRM is a customer relations management system. I might have messed that up, but it's something along those lines. And it's a place where you can actually enter in the information of the people you're working with. There's like HubSpot, Nimble, a bunch of these that are free for personal use. So if you're super organized and want to have like a database available to yourself, you can use those CRMs. And then if maybe you're not looking to, develop a CRM, Google Spreadsheets is a great way of also tracking the people who you've connected with in any given moment. Just creating like Google Spreadsheets or Excel docs, whatever it might be, that's your own personal system. Basically track the people you've spoken with, and you can even sometimes also track when your last communication was with them. So that you can remember like, hey, do I need to ping this person? Do I need to do something to support them? Can I provide value to them at this stage? Just to keep the relationship going and fostered over the long term. I hope that makes sense. Now, a couple of important notes. When we talk about networking, it can sometimes feel transactional. And that is the last thing that I want networking to be for anybody. I find real joy in meeting people and connecting with them. But if somebody is treating a networking conversation like we're two robots who are supposed to, go through a conversation in order to get to a transaction, I do not enjoy that. I'm less likely to help that person because it's not sincere or authentic. And those are values that drive me for sure. So definitely make a personal connection. You can share personal stories, hey, I just had the most amazing weekend, or, something, I'm motivated in this work because of something that happened to me earlier, right? So really think about how it is that you're making a personal as well as professional connection. Practice curiosity about the other person. I see a lot of networking conversations happening where somebody who's looking for something spends 95% of the time talking, and then at the end tries to make an ask. And I'm not sure that they've actually learned anything about the other person, that they've really gotten to know what the other person's specialty is, where they can provide knowledge or information or connections. So really be curious. It's going to also benefit the quality of the relationship as well as what comes from the relationship. And make it a two-way conversation. Again, my pet peeve is when somebody takes 95% of the time to talk at me instead of trying to make a personal connection. It's just be conscious of the floor and how you share the floor. That is one of the biggest things I can say in any sort of relationship development that you might do in your life. Now, a couple bonus tips. When you're doing outreach, you want to keep it really short. Define your proposition, you can send your elevator pitch, communicate your value, what it is you can do for that person, and make the ask. Maybe it's not that you can do something immediately or tangibly, but maybe you can share an article or compliment them for the work that they've done. Those are great ways to provide value in an outreach. I will say the keep it short part is a major, major key. I will get emails from people of 5 paragraphs trying to describe, their elevator pitch and trying to describe what it is that they're looking for. And I will literally write back to those people, I'm sorry, I need you to synopsize what you sent to me and share this in 3 sentences, because I don't have the time to make sense of somebody else's ramblings. I need you to be really clear and direct and short. So that shortness is a major win. There's a reason that LinkedIn has a character limit for outreach, especially for that initial outreach. You want to personalize it, including the subject line. Do not copy and paste your outreach to multiple people. That is not an effective strategy. You want to say something along the lines of hey, I was specifically impressed by this experience you had, or given that you and I both have an interest in this, organization that we follow, or whatever it might be. Make it clear that you've spent time getting to know that person and you're not just spamming 100 people with the same request. One way that you can increase the likelihood that someone is going to open an email you sent is to include their name in the subject line. A small but important tip. Always have a clear call to action. So in an outreach email, it's not enough to be hey, maybe we can connect sometime. That's not clear. It's vague, and there's no need for me to respond to that. So as I said earlier, you really want to practice your ask and get really clear and definitive on what it is. Hey, I'd love to touch base with you. It would be great if you're free, next Wednesday or Thursday in the afternoons. I'm wide open and can send you a Zoom link, right? Something as clear as that is giving people an impetus to respond. It's also just kind, right? It's not it gives people a sense of direction. And if you're asking somebody else for support, you need to be the one kind of driving the car so that they know how they can jump in, right? They don't want to have to drive the car if they're the ones ultimately responding to your request. This is a personal pet peeve of the whole Be Social Change team. Do not say pick your brain. It makes it sound like such a one-way conversation, right? Hey, I'm going to pick your brain. I'd love to pick your brain. It doesn't do anything for us, right? I want to know why I should have a conversation with you, not just to regale you with, what I've learned and however long I've been working. So don't say pick your brain. It's also just a gross thing when you really think about what it means. Follow up once or twice in 5 to 8 days. So this is really important. You can follow up every 5 to 8 days. 2 weeks is fine too. Just make sure that you're not just leaving it on the ground. As I said before, when I'm going through busy periods and I can't manage my inbox, I only respond to the people who have followed up. It's helpful. It's helpful for me. And I think it will be helpful for you. I highly recommend that your follow-up is kind. Never go into the place of guilt. That is not cool and not a way to build a relationship. Like, hey, I noticed that you haven't responded to me. What's that about? Not cool. Don't go there. Okay. While I take a big breath and a sip of water, I'd love to hear in the chat, what was your biggest takeaway from today's conversation? What's one thing that you're going to take away into your networking practices and into kind of what you're going to do as a networker moving forward? Please feel free to go ahead and write that in the chat while I take a sip of water. And then I will get that down to resources to support you, as well as any follow-up questions you might have. 2 things: making the jump for a spreadsheet mapping my network. Yep. And the follow-up piece. I've been timid about that. Morgan, thank you so much for sharing this. The follow-up piece is so crucial. I can't even emphasize it enough. And it's, people think, oh, I don't want to be a pest. And it's the antithesis of pest. It's showing interest, right? I'm really not that interested in connecting with someone who thinks that I'm like one of, 100 people who they're going to send out networking outreach to. And, if I respond, great. But if I don't, they don't need me. The follow-up shows a sincere interest in making an actual connection with that person. Thank you. Sending follow-up emails / messages, like what you said with Boomerang, sending an additional email a few days later if they haven't responded. So sending a follow-up message, just like a thank you email, is great. Nora, you're totally spot on. Like a thank you email is always helpful. Definitely when you've made a connection, it's gonna be really important to see, just to get a sense, like to share that it was meaningful. That's one of the great forms of relationship building. Aiming to connect with people not so senior in the company. Great, Zach. Yeah, that's a pretty key one. It will help you big time in your networking responses. The follow-up message reminders. Nice. All right. Well, I'm so glad that this was beneficial and helpful. I want to share some great places to do networking, as well as a resource for you. I saw also definitely follow up, but also thinking through in advance how I might develop a personal connection. Nice, Colin. This is really going to help you. That personal connection is like, I don't know how to put it, but it's like the secret ingredient in networking that makes it effective. So where can you go from here? I want to invite you all to become Be Social Change members. It's www.besocialchange.com/membership. I can throw a link in the chat after the slideshow. It's $79 a year, but it gives you access to networking opportunities, including free online events where you can introduce yourself in the chat. And as I shared, it's been really helpful for people. Free access to webinar recordings. We have over 60 recordings on different social impact topics. Free member-only networking. We do this every month this year. I think next year we're going to do it every other month, and it's incredibly helpful to just get out there, practice your elevator pitch, meet awesome people around the country and around the world. Highly recommend. Free online workshops and webinars similar to this one, as well as the best purpose-driven community. Totally biased, and I stand by it 1000%. When trying to connect with a person of an opposite gender, how to avoid making them think you're trying to build a personal connection rather than you need some help? Especially as you said, it is not wise to ask for help in the first connection. It's totally fine to ask for help in the first connection. Actually, I want to make that clear. The first meaningful connection. So what I mean by that is if you're in a conversation with someone, you can ask for help. Don't ask for help in the first outreach. The first outreach is usually asking for this type of space. If you're doing it online, like if you're in a digital group, don't ask for help as the first thing you do in that digital group, but at some point you're more than welcome to. So I hear what you're saying, Zach. I'm laughing because our CEO and founder, Marco Salazar, has really funny stories of going out for networking conversations that he was clear that somebody else thought was very much a good date. And so he'd probably be a better person to make this happen with. But one thing that you can always do is just be really clear about your purpose and intention. Hey, I'm really looking for professional contacts right now in this industry, or I'm looking to meet really interesting people who have done the type of work that I want to do. Would love to connect. Just make your purpose clear, and it should be fine. Now, while you're building that personal connection, if there's a spark or you're worried that the person feels like you're flirting with them, what you can always do is just, again, make really clear, I'm so happy to make this professional connection with you. Just keep emphasizing that. That's my personal go-to. I don't know if Marcos has additional ideas, but I'll find out for you. What is the appropriate time to outreach when you meet someone at a networking event? Or how can you reconnect with a lead that you might have connected with in the past but forgot to follow through with? What is an appropriate way to re-engage? Okay, Great. I'm going to answer this as two separate questions. What is the appropriate time to outreach someone when you met them at a networking event? As soon as possible. Like definitely the next day or week is going to be important. If it's not within the next day or week, one thing that often happens is that you start to forget and that connection feels less alive. So you're doing yourself a favor by making it a little bit more rapid pace as far as just like reaching out and sending a quick note. You could even send a quick note saying like, hey, really enjoyed meeting you. I'm going to connect with you in a couple of weeks because I would love to continue the conversation, or I have a specific ask for you, but I just wanted to send a quick thank you note for taking the time to chat yesterday. It's totally fine. Now, your other question is, how can you reconnect with a lead that you might have reconnected with in the past, but who you forgot to follow through with? Yes, this is called a large portion of my career, is forgetting to follow through with people and then realizing, oh, I wanted to talk to them. What's an appropriate way to reengage? Be honest. That is the number one thing that you can do. Hey, we met a couple of years ago at this event. You might not remember. Here's a little bit more about me. I was so grateful for the time then, and would love to connect with you now. That's totally fine. If for any reason you get pushback around that, or you don't get a response, that's okay too. That person, that connection is less strong after time. And that's not something that you need to, feel bad about. It's just the way that things happen. So you can always try that. One appropriate way to re-engage too is to think about what are the updates. I also wanted to share with you an update on my end. This is what's been happening for me since. I'd love to hear what's happening for you. It makes it more contemporary, right? Like I'm reaching out with this new news. What would you recommend? We're going to ask, what would you recommend if you're not sure what you can provide to someone, even after doing some research? Make it more general, or even ask what they need at that moment? 100%. Morgan, you have great instincts. Yes, definitely. Something that you can always think about is, I always think there's 3 primary forms of providing value, which is like shared interest or connection. Maybe you went to the same school, maybe you have a similar interest. And then, so there's that shared connection. There's actually providing value, like, hey, I saw that your organization is working with this client. I've worked with them in the past and I know what it's like. Or even sending an article like, hey, I saw, you're interested in change management. So am I. Here's an interesting article about that. That's a way of providing value. And third is flattery. And I mean honest flattery, not the type that's like kind of icky, but like, hey, I'm really impressed by your career. I think it's awesome what you've been able to do in a short time. I think it's really cool that you've worked for these organizations that I really admire. That's a form of providing value as well. So if you're like really hesitant, you feel like, I don't know what I can say to this person yet, you can always share, go about it a different way, whether it's compliments, like sharing resources, or noting a shared connection. Then the second part of your question, make it more general, even asking what they need in that moment. Yes. So this is harder to do in outreach. I usually recommend saving this like for the conversation that you might have with someone. One of my favorite things in a networking conversation, because it truly makes me feel like something is going 2 ways, is when somebody asks me, how can I help your efforts right now? What do you need in this moment? It makes me feel so good. It makes me know that I have like a champion on my side, and that this wasn't just like me giving, but also knowing that there was a reciprocity that's really helpful. So you can definitely ask that. If you can figure out how to artfully do so within the networking outreach, Morgan, you have a great mind for this. I could totally imagine you doing this. You let me know how that goes, because I've never figured out how to do it successfully. Sonia asks, how to best personalize an email to incentivize people to respond regarding professional opportunities. So personalizing an email, you want to do your research. You really want to know, where has that person worked in the past? What is this person passionate about? Who do they follow on LinkedIn? Where have they gone to school? Like, without getting stalkery, just using the information that's available to you to really personalize the email. Say like, hey, I'm a massive fan of this organization, or I saw that you're following, this thought leader. I looked at their page and I thought it was really cool. Thank you for pointing them out. Show that you've done your research. And also make it personal. Like sometimes a simple sentence, something along the lines of, given your work at organization, you have, such unique insights that are really valuable. Given my work, I'd love to share too the insights that I've come to too. Something along those lines makes it clear, right, that you're reaching out to a specific person. You've personalized it enough to include their organization. And Sonia, if I can answer in greater specificity about the profession regarding professional opportunities, let me know, because I'm not sure I'm fully capturing that question. That makes a lot of sense. Those other options. Great. I'm so glad that this is helpful. Are there any other questions coming up for people? If there are, just write a Q in the chat so I know to stay online. But otherwise, I want to just thank you all for taking the time to be here today. Thanks for sharing a little bit of your afternoon with me. And I wish for you really happy, productive networking as you move forward. Have a great rest of the day and great networking.